Hello there, welcome back to the Steel City Sports Podcast. I know it's been a long time since I've posted on this channel. It's been since the Super Bowl, but I do plan to get back into this. I want to post a lot more videos, and especially with the NBA playoffs coming up, I do want to kind of break down some of those matchups. But today we have an NFL video. It seems like my NFL videos perform a lot better than my NBA videos on this channel. So today we're doing the top 5 most intriguing teams going into next season. So I know we're still a long ways out from the season, a couple months still. We didn't even have the draft yet. But what I mean by intriguing is these teams could either be really good or really bad, and I really wouldn't be that surprised. It just comes down to situationally. A couple different things have to go right for these teams, but I think they're all very intriguing teams. So let's get into the list. Coming in at number 5, we have the Denver Broncos. Looking back at last season, they were probably the most disappointing team outside of the Rams because bringing in Russell Wilson, who at the time I thought when healthy, Russell Wilson was a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. They just brought in a new offensive coach, Nathaniel Hackett. He's gone after not even a full season with the team. And the thing that's intriguing to me for them this year is basically all of the blame was put on Nathaniel Hackett. Like, they used him as a scapegoat, and Russell Wilson, I get it because he's on such a massive deal. It's basically an immovable contract, so it's not like you can blame Russ. So you kind of were forced into blaming Hackett. I'm not saying that Hackett didn't deserve blame. He definitely did deserve the blame, but it seemed like he got a lot more share of the blame than Wilson did. And so now that you're bringing in what a lot of people consider to be a top 10 coach of all time in Sean Payton, which I think is overstated. I have my issues with Sean Payton. Not going to get into all that right now. But obviously that's a big name. They paid Sean Payton a lot of money to come fix this team. And especially in that division, you go back a year from today when we were talking about how this could be one of the best divisions in the NFL. And the Broncos were a big reason for that because we thought they would be at least a playoff team. And they were one of the worst teams in the NFL. And so, like I said, bringing in Sean Payton, it's going to be interesting to see. Is Russell Wilson still going to play bad? I mean, obviously, his running ability, which is what made him a superstar in Seattle, he really didn't show that at all. I don't know if that's because he got paid. He didn't feel like running around anymore, or if just physically he can't do it anymore. And also, his arm ability looked shot last year. Anything past 10 yards just looked like he had a noodle arm. So that's a very intriguing team. They still have a great defense, still have really good personnel on this team, so they come in at 5. In at number 4, we have the Carolina Panthers, and they're on this list for a pretty obvious reason. They have the first overall pick, so depending on who they take with that pick, I think it's going to be very intriguing. It's obviously a very weak division. On paper, the Saints should win this division, but I don't trust the Saints. I have to believe it before I see it. So for me, this division is kind of wide open, and if Carolina gets a really good player first overall, whether it is Stroud or Young, I really do think it's between those two. I know people are trying to throw in the Anthony Richardson thing or Will Levis, but I ultimately think it'll come down between Stroud or Young. And whatever one it is between the two, if they are like a good starting level quarterback, this team can win some games. I mean, I think they have a significant upgrade at head coach going from Matt Rule to Frank Reich, who I think Frank Reich's still a really good head coach in the NFL. I don't really get why the Colts fired him. It's not like it was his fault that Matt Ryan was washed up. So you have him. You have a lot of personnel on the defense that I like. They have a lot of nice young defensive pieces. And I know that they did get rid of DJ Moore, but they've made some pretty big signings on the offensive side of the ball. Adam Thielen, we've only seen him the past couple of years in a secondary role. He was the number 2 behind Jefferson, so now he's going to be the clear number 1 on Carolina. Gives that rookie quarterback someone to throw the ball to. Although he is older, so I don't love it, but it's better than not having any receiver. I still think he can perform at a Pro Bowl level, at least for this year. You just got Miles Sanders, who was an integral piece of the Eagles' Super Bowl run. So, I think shame on Philly for letting him go, and that's a massive pickup for Carolina. They also got Hayden Hurst, who's a pretty good starting-level tight end. So they have some pieces for whether it's C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young to play with, and they have a competent offensive head coach. There's a lot of things that I like about this team. So they're at 4. Coming in at number 3, we have the Detroit Lions, and I think they are a very fascinating team just for the fact that Aaron Rodgers, we all know that he's going to the Jets, so this leaves the NFC North wide open. You look at the Vikings, I have some issues with them. Their defense is pretty terrible, and the Bears are still in a rebuild, so the Packers are going to enter their rebuild. For me, that leaves this division wide open for Detroit. They went 9-8 last year. They were one game off of missing the playoffs. They knocked Green Bay out of playoff contention last year in that final game. And you can make an argument that Jared Goff is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL just based off of his last year production. They have some good weapons around him. They have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. The defense was always kind of their problem, but they had some pretty big signings, getting two really good corners. Cam Sutton from my Steelers, breaks my heart he's gone. And also Gardner Johnson from Philly, who was an integral piece to that Super Bowl run, another piece that Philly lost. So they can be really good. And also, not to mention Dan Campbell. I really did not like Dan Campbell early on. His first year, it was kind of a head-scratcher, but he really won me over. He's not the best X's and O's type of coach where he's like just the play guru. But in terms of motivation, I don't know if there's a better coach in the NFL when it just comes to you want to run through a brick wall for this guy. He is incredible at motivating guys. And just on paper, they have a nice team. And the division is kind of weak with Aaron leaving. So Detroit is here at 3. And speaking of Aaron Rodgers, coming in at number 2, we have the New York Jets. And of course, as of this time, Aaron Rodgers is not officially a Jet, but the Jets have made a lot of moves this offseason that look like they're catering to Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, bringing in Nathaniel Hackett as offensive coordinator. We know that they have close ties. They brought in Alan Lazard, who was his kind of security blanket last year and one of the players that was on his so-called list. And also, they've reached out to Odell. We know Odell was another player that Aaron Rodgers kind of wanted to play with. And looking at the defense, they have the potential to be one of the best defenses in the NFL. Sauce Gardner's the best cornerback in football. I like their pass rush. And, I'm not big on defensive head coaches, but Robert Saleh, got to give him credit. He has really solved his side of the ball. Defense is really good. And then offensively, you bring in Aaron to put in with all these young pieces they have. I think he's going to be committed. He's the type of guy to have a chip on his shoulder. You put him with Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore. And Breece Hall was looking like he was going to break out as a superstar in his first year. The O-line is definitely improving. So I think they're extremely intriguing, especially in this division where you have really good teams like Buffalo and Miami. We could see some really fun shootouts between these teams if Aaron's there. So they're here at number 2. And the most intriguing team next season, I think, is the Cleveland Browns. You can say the Jets, of course, because Aaron's going there. But for the Browns, the reason why I put them at number 1 is because they have the greatest potential to be either really good or really bad. Because if they're getting the version of Deshaun Watson they traded for and gave that fully guaranteed deal to, the guy in 2019 who, obviously the Texans weren't a good team in 2019, but individually, Deshaun Watson was a top 5 player in the NFL that year. Go back and look at his stats. He was an absolute magician on the field. So, of course, he has some rust missing the last 2 years, but if they get that version of him, this team can easily win 12 games. Easily. Just given the personnel they have on both sides of the ball. Amari Cooper is still a top 10 receiver in my opinion. They still have their incredible running back tandem. Nick Chubb, easily top 5 running back in the NFL. Kareem Hunt's a great complementary piece. They still have a fantastic offensive line. Of course, Myles Garrett is always in DPOY conversations, and I still like their secondary with Denzel Ward. And then, of course, Stefanski is... This is a pretty big year for Stefanski because, his first year in 2020, he wins Coach of the Year. Then they have back-to-back disappointing seasons. And now all the chips are on the table, I think, for Stefanski. It has to work at least a little bit here for him to have some stability and some comfort with his job. Because if they have another failed season after giving Deshaun all this money, you got to start questioning what's going on here. Obviously, this all does come down to Deshaun, though. If Deshaun is the same player he was the last 6 weeks of the season, the Browns are not going to be a good team because it looked like Deshaun was nowhere near the level of production we're accustomed to seeing him play at. And again, that could come down to rust because he missed the last 2 years, and also he's in a brand new system. Or, like I said, he could come back as his 2019 self. So I could see the Browns winning easily, 5 games if they're really bad, or if Deshaun's good, they could win 12. That's, for me, why they're number 1. So that's been my most intriguing teams going into the season. We're definitely going to be doing some NFL draft content and NBA playoff content. So stay tuned for that. Please like and subscribe. Thanks.